Okay. There we are. We are live. Welcome to the people that are joining us. It's nice to see you online this evening. Please let us know where you are joining us from. And we've got a few minutes before we start. I'm just going to let everybody join us. Okay, see that Facebook is on. It's not going live there. Okay, we're just going to wait 2 more minutes and we'll start at 7 on the dot. Welcome to everyone that's just joined us. Let us know where you're joining us from tonight. There's quite a few people that have joined us now. Welcome to everybody. Johannesburg, George from Johannesburg. Henk from Boksburg, Andre in Cape Town, Sean in Joburg. Welcome to all of you. Awesome. Okay, we are almost there. 1 more minute and then we will start. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we are going to get the show on the road. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are very, very excited for this evening's event. This is the Business Book Club's 49th event. It's our 7th online event since COVID graced us with its presence last year. We have had to move some of our events online, but it's really great because we get to reach people in other areas. And in fact, tonight's author is from Cape Town. So, it just allows us to reach more people, and people can watch this afterwards as well. So my name is Bronwyn, and I've been involved with the Business Book Club for over 3 years now. I've really loved seeing how this initiative has inspired and helped so many people in their lives and in their businesses. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background of the Business Book Club. It was started in April 2017 with the purpose of sharing knowledge, because what is the use of knowledge if we keep it to ourselves? And our founder and CEO, his line is always, we don't know what we don't know. And so this is how we learn and grow in our lives and businesses. So the Business Book Club is a non-profit organization, and we interview a different local author every month for people to learn, grow, and share in life and in business. And I just want to show you some of the authors that we have had in the past. Sorry, the video is slightly over the picture. We've had many, many amazing authors join us, and we've been very, very fortunate to have this caliber of people joining us at our events. And so those are all our authors that we have already showcased. We have also collected over 8,000 secondhand books through these events and to distribute to underprivileged areas and communities in South Africa. So that is our main purpose of the Business Book Club, is to do that. Here's just a few pictures. There's some pictures of our past live events, which we really hope we'll be able to get to do again soon. And a couple of pictures of our founder, who is there distributing some books in Johannesburg. We also would like to thank our amazing sponsors for making all of these events possible. They really do amazing things for us in order to keep this running and keep it going. So please feel free during the course of the interview tonight to pose your questions to our author. At any stage in the evening, you can do that, and we will feed them through during the course of the interview. So I'd like to introduce to you the man behind the concept and behind the Business Book Club. He's very passionate about helping people succeed personally and in their businesses. He is a next level master coach and has helped more than 100 CEOs and other leaders take their businesses and their lives to the next level and more than double their company revenues. He is also dedicated to making a difference in people's lives. So I'd like to hand you over now to our founder and our CEO, Mr. Jacques Velleman.
Good evening, and Bronwyn, thank you very much for that introduction. What an amazing time it is to be here. Bronwyn, just double checking, can you hear me? Last time I didn't have my microphone on, but this time
Yes,
Bronwyn, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. Great, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a special night. We've got one of our local authors, Adam Rabinowitz, who is going to join us. But before I invite him on and before we get to know our author, first things first, just once again, thank you for Bronwyn for the introduction. Really appreciate your efforts behind the scenes. And just to let everybody know that, the Business Book Club, our purpose is to share knowledge. As Bronwyn has mentioned, you don't know what you don't know. And we are extremely grateful and thankful for all the books that our community has given us to share and distribute. We are in a drive. We are almost we are distributing and donating about 500 to 1,000 books a month, which we wouldn't have been able to do without your blessing, without your books. So if you've got any books that are lying around at home that you're not reading, or somebody is busy moving house and there are books that need a home, the Business Book Club is your place. We are at 64 to Rocco Street in North Scott. You are more than welcome to drop it off at any time. Just give us a buzz. But we're here 8 to 5 every day, Monday to Friday, and we would appreciate as many books as possible to give to those communities who are in dire need of knowledge, and who doesn't have the access to knowledge like most of us privileged people have. All right, so without further ado, I want to call upon Adam to join me here on the proverbial online stage. Adam, are you with us?
Jacques, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Excellent, Adam, welcome. And thank you very much for joining us here on the Business Book Club. It's a great, great pleasure to have you and to be able to go through your latest book with you and to get some insights on how to grow your business. So very, 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 very welcome to the Business Book Club.
Thanks so much, Jacques. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Great. So Adam, obviously there's a lot of people that know you well, your wife, your kids, and your friends close to you. But unfortunately, there are some of the people in the Business Book Club that don't know you as well as they should. And we're first going to dive in a bit about who the man is behind the book, how to create, fix, and grow your business. But before we do that, let's just get behind the author, Mr. Adam Rabinowitz. So Adam, when did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer? I mean, a lot of people talk about writing a book one day, but you've done it. And when did you first realize that?
So Jacques, I wanted to write a book since I was probably 19 or 20 years old. In fact, not too long ago while we were moving house, I found a box with a handwritten draft of my first fiction book, my first novel that I started writing. I must have been about 19 or 20 years old. And, back then it was not easy to write a book because, the computers weren't as easy to come by and you couldn't stand in line at a supermarket and type up your book on your cell phone. So I waited till I got a computer, and then life got in the way, and I started writing into my 40s. In fact, this book is my 11th book that I've written, but my first nonfiction. The others are all fiction. So I'm now a seasoned author, but I've been teaching, and my passion is to help people learn for so long. It's taken me this long to distill what I consider, decent stuff to read in a nonfiction.
Yeah. So Adam, what a lot of people don't know about you is obviously that you're a fictional writer as well. So this is a man of many talents, ladies and gentlemen. If you read a bit about his biography, this man can play the guitar. He can write books. As a matter of fact, he's one of those individuals that uses his brain, because whatever he puts his mind to, he actually achieves. So Adam, just very shortly, you also go under a ghostwriter name just under a different name, not a ghostwriter name, a different name for your nonfiction. And what's the genre of nonfiction that you write about?
The genre of fiction.
The genre of fiction. Apologies.
There's a whole lot of different ones. So I'm one of those authors, kind of like Stephen King, who doesn't stick to one genre, but I'm probably known for suspense and thriller. But I've written a series of thriller, kind of vigilante thrillers. There's 3 books in that series, and another one coming. There's a fantasy novel. There's a humorous crime fiction novel which is set in Sandton. Be careful if you ever go to Sandton City again, because there's a book that's written right there. It might take place while you're shopping. So it's all over the place. There's a number of different things, and they kind of hop and flit from different things. And then I tried my hand at a romance, which also was an interesting one. Yeah, very well. My wife.
Well. And so if anybody wants to look for any of your fiction books, under what name are they going to look?
So look for AdamAlexanderAuthor.com.
Adam Alexander Author. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, AlexanderAuthor.com. Then obviously to have, but tonight we are talking about his business book. He's obviously a lecturer. He's a man of many talents. But Adam, please share with the audience, why would people listen or read to what you have to say? What gives you the authority to speak about how to create, manage, fix, and grow your business?
So, Jacques, you know what they say? Those who can teach and those who can't do. Or those who can't teach can do. Now, I've got a foot now in both camps. I am a seasoned entrepreneur, and I've been running a business, I think, since I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
I started my first business when I left university, and I've always had one foot in running my own business or wanting to be an independent business owner right from the time I left varsity. So I tried to run a business unsuccessfully for a long time, and I think I've experienced what a lot of people go through in their businesses, which is having a great idea and then experiencing that euphoria of beginning a business and then understanding that it's not all a bed of roses once you get into it. And then at some point I figured out that there must be something I don't know, because things just weren't working as well as they should. And that light bulb moment came when I went and studied and learned about business and applied all those learnings in my own business. And then from that moment on, my business turned around and it became a viable, successful business. My journey in entrepreneurship and other entrepreneurial ventures became so much more focused and more successful. And at the same time, I was lecturing, and I discovered what people are stumbling with in terms of what they think they know, and also, as you say, not even knowing what they don't know.
Yeah.
And having lectured in classrooms for 8 or 9 years, a combination of middle managers, senior managers, and entrepreneurs, I distilled what I think are the most important lessons that will definitely make a big difference in the way people either approach their jobs as managers, if you're not fortunate enough to be running your own business, or in their roles as business leaders.
Yeah. So Adam, just share with us, I mean, you're saying your businesses are successful. What do you mean? What's your definition of that?
So, Jacques, a successful business is one that has been in operation for a long time, that has a track record, that has a consistent stream of income, and that's a business that's not living from hand to mouth, but it's now in the process of growth and what I call super growth. So my idea of a viable business is a business that can pay its rent, pay its salaries, and not worry about where the money's coming from tomorrow, or not worrying about where the customers are coming from, because you're providing something that people want and need, and where your focus is on how you can become sort of a global footprint.
Yeah. So Adam, obviously there's the other side of success is always failure. So how has a failure for you specifically set you up for later success?
Wow. I think you're going to have to say pick a failure, because there's been so many. One of the slides that I used in my lecture, Jacques, was just to kind of establish myself as an authority in how to create a successful business. Yeah. And started off with a list of maybe about 20 businesses that I've started over the years, and a little red tick or a green tick about whether or not these businesses have succeeded or failed. Yeah. And all but 2 of them had these red ticks, because at some point or other these ideas didn't work. I don't know if I can pick one particular failure as the kind of the key, because they all all these different lessons that I learned through business failure were all significant, and they've all kind of formed this mosaic of what I use every day in the way I think and approach business. But I think one of the biggest ones was the restaurant business that I owned.
Yeah.
I had a little restaurant just down the way from you, Jacques, always, called the Secret Garden in Northcott Manor.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Which we started. It was a great idea when we started, and I think probably one of the most significant lessons that I learned from that is that the idea that you come up with is very different from the job that you end up with. So I had a great idea to kind of create this restaurant, this coffee shop where people could come and do their thing. And I ended up creating a nightmare of an administrative job for myself, being a restaurant manager that I was very ill prepared for.
Yeah.
So so things like over the years also, I mean, I found people that have had these ideas where they think the idea is going to be this, but it ends up being work. So work that I understood, that I ended up having to do, that I wasn't prepared for, was stock management, inventory management, process control, organizing the entire kitchen delivery process, HR management, and understanding how to deal with staff, how to motivate staff, how to stop pilferage and stealing. Mm-hmm. Basically, how to manage a successful business on a micro scale was something that I really didn't even know how to do. But I was running a business that was consuming money and time and consumables every second. And tighter control would have been a better idea.
Yeah, it's amazing how these things work. A lot of the time we think of business as simple, and I sometimes find that interesting with some of my clients. Especially if a division of theirs is in the sales. Well, obviously they've got a division that is called sales, and the salespeople are always, they calculate the sums and they work out the GPs of how much money the bosses is making. And recently, I was running a strategic workshop for a client at Mabula. And, when we started sharing with the sales staff, okay, so what is the GP actually being used for? Like, they've got to be ISO compliant, so that's 300,000. Then they've got to put in a new ERP system. That's another 1.6 million. And if you start looking at all the components of what a business is made of and what it costs, you can't just look at a margin in isolation, because there's so many other aspects of a business. And that actually leads very nicely into part one of your book. So ladies and gentlemen, this book, How to Create, Manage, Fix, and Grow Your Business, as you can see, this is actually part one of Adam's book. In other words, there's a part two that is coming up, so keep your eyes open for that. And part two will be obviously a little bit more advanced and longer down the journey of running a successful business. Not running a business, running a successful business. And tonight we're going to cover two parts. So part one is really about the startup phase, and part two is about managing after you've gone through the startup phase. So Adam, what I've done is I've actually done a little summary of your part one. I'm going to put that up on the screen. Let's see that everybody can see that. So that's the startup phase and it sort of takes what you've said into a nutshell, but it more allocates the points that I want to bring up for discussion for us for tonight. Because in the startup phase, Adam, you specifically first talk about the planning. If we look up here, there's a planning phase, which is about an idea, assembling resources, and mobilizing resources. Because I've heard so many people say, yes, I had this idea, and then somebody else took the idea and they've actually run with it. But there's actually zero value in an idea as a standalone. Am I right, Adam?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a little philosophy that I use when people bring business plans with these business plans with these ideas that are going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. Where a business plan with lots of zeros is worth every one of those zeros. Your idea is always a great idea, but every idea is a great idea. But it's how that idea gets commercialized that makes a difference between a good idea and just an idea. Yeah. And we've all had ideas that other people have taken and run with and everything. But I think we have to realize we're in the era of massive information distribution. So that by the time you've had an idea, it's more than likely 1 million people have also come across that same idea, and you're probably not the first one to come up with that idea. But it's how you take the idea and make it unique and refine it that makes all the difference.
A lot of the times it's about the packaging, and we're going to talk about that in a while when we look at market testing. But when we talk about resources, Adam, assembling and mobilizing, what do you mean by resources?
So Jacques, it's everything that's going to go into pulling that idea off the ground, and it's not always people. So some ideas might require some development, perhaps a scientific development or a technology development, or even just fixing up a shop front to make a presence. And we talk about all the resources that are involved in making that idea a reality, and that's everything from before we even get to mobilizing resources, testing that idea thoroughly and understanding whether or not it's going to be a good idea before you start throwing money and time into it. And then you start assembling resources, and that'll include the money that you need to start this venture, the investors that you might need to put behind the venture, the first team that you need to create that beta product. So that's all that R&D. So we don't always have money to buy resources. in the ideal world, you say, right, well, we want to create, I don't know, we want to create a plant that turns cow manure into energy. Yeah, it's possible, but how do we do it? So you start testing and experimenting, and you get scientists or people that understand the engineering processes involved, and it's all of those discussions and all of those people where you want to get somebody who knows this element, and they've got to put something together for you to use. I had some ideas where I needed some electronic components developed. So it was all about having those discussions with the scientists and the people that had those electronic component knowledge and the factories to build electronic components. But they wanted, R500,000 or $1 million to build something. And we don't all have that kind of money. So it's about, getting them to help you build a prototype or getting somebody that can build a component of it or a piece of that whole entire solution, help you get the building blocks in place so that you can come up with what we call a minimum viable product, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So you can prove the concept, and then test it and put your product in the hands of real people. Yeah. All of those things is what I call the assembling resources. You can't just jump straight from having an idea into production and selling. Yeah. There's that process in between where you've got to put the thing together, develop that first product. And that's the whole assembling resources stage, and I think that's where a lot of ideas fail. I don't know if you found the same thing in the people that you consult with, but not every idea that goes into that assembling of resources phases comes out the other side.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you asked that, Adam, because I'm actually even though I consult and as a business coach help other people grow their businesses, I'm also putting my money where my mouth is. So I'm also developing my own businesses on the side. And, we're busy creating an online retail business. And I must say, one of the things that I've realized through that, because, we've got the ideas, we've got the patterns, but we need other people to manufacture. And it's very interesting. I totally underestimated the time to get the right people to do the right things for you. And when you talk about resources, you're also talking about your own time. How much of your own time do you have available to put into a idea to get it to a phase where you can actually start invoicing and making money? Because making something pretty is one component. Invoicing and getting money for it is totally something different.
And I think you also, people underestimate the value of their time that they put into the venture. So they'll yes. My restaurant experience, I really did not imagine I would need so much time to run the restaurant and be there. And I was there all the time. I was there when it opened at 6 in the morning, and I left at 5, 6 in the evening. And that for a restaurateur, I think, is a very short day. So I was lucky the thing wasn't open at night. But you don't understand the value of the amount of time that you spent on that thing until it's gone. Yeah. And then you back and you ask yourself the question, well, was that the best way to have spent my time? Could I have done something else with it? And there's the opportunity cost of your time that one needs to factor in. And you're a resource in your business. You can't just say that you come for free just because you're the guy with the idea. Nobody's calling you to a mouth saying this is your purpose in life. You have to do this.
Now I've seen many business owners that say, no, my business is breaking free. And then I ask them the question, so what salary are you drawing? No, I'm not drawing a salary yet. I'm living off my loan account, but it's okay. I've got a bit of savings, and that's what's happening in the background. And I'm like, but that's not a viable business. A viable business is where you need to take a proper salary, and not everybody is necessarily on that same page.
Yeah, somebody's got to pay those bills.
Sorry, say that again, Adam.
Somebody's got to pay those bills.
Yes, absolutely.
Borrowings forever.
Absolutely. But Adam, let's move on to the next phase of a business. It's, once we've got it, we've got the idea, we've got the resources, we're starting to mobilize those resources. Then comes the market testing, and there's quite a few things involved there. And I love the business model canvas. It's very, very popular. There's a book out on that for anybody that wants to have more detailed, or otherwise just buy Adam's book and you'll get the summary version. You don't need anything more than that. But before you can actually go to the business model canvas, you've got to do the critical thing of understanding your customer value proposition and to be clear on what market you are serving. And Adam, that goes hand in hand with something else, which is what you allude to. You go through it in detail. Is about the minimum viable product. But just explain to our listeners, what do you mean by a minimum viable product?
So, Jacques, the minimum viable product is something I wish I'd learned about 30 years ago. You find a lot of people that will come up with ideas and they will try and produce the entire idea. So for example, I don't know, let's say you want to open up for want of a better example, the coffee shop, So you think there's a great spot and that needs a restaurant. Let's go and put a restaurant there. So what do? You go and negotiate the premises with the landlord. You go and get probably about R1 million to open up the restaurant and put in the shop fittings and this and that and the other and hire staff and train staff. And then you open the doors and then you discover nobody comes, because you've opened up a restaurant in an area that doesn't have foot traffic, or you open up a restaurant that's a daytime thing and people want to go at night, or you're selling the type of menu that's too overpriced or underpriced for your particular market. And the minimum viable product is something where that I came across that asks this question, once you've discovered where you've burnt all your money and you're sitting there with your whole business around your feet because it failed, you discovered something at that point, which is that either people don't like your product, or you've got the wrong product, or people won't pay the money that you're asking. And the question that everybody says at that point is, why couldn't I have discovered this sooner? And the minimum viable product is the basic skeletal version of your core concept that's going to help you answer that question before you pour millions and millions of rands into a concept. So if you read the minimum viable product is from a book by Eric Ries called Lean Startup Methodology. Yeah. And in that, he talks about a whole journey that his company went on to build some technological product, and they discovered when they released it that nobody wanted it. And he talks about the philosophy behind this minimum viable product, which is to try and build validated tests about your concept long before you spend loads of time and money building a product. So if you want to unpack that, for example, if I want to open a restaurant and it's going to cost me 3 million rand, I've got to figure out whether or not people are going to buy what I'm going to spend 3 million rand building for long before I spend the 3 million rand. Yeah. So, let's say I want to sell, I don't know, some fancy Korean menu, and I want to put it in a particular area. Your questions you have to ask are all the assumptions that you have in your mind about, if I build it, they will come. This is your field of dreams, right?
Build it and they will arrive.
So if I build this Korean restaurant, it's going to be full. Wonderful. So if you then start saying, cool, what assumptions am I making in that whole vision? And the assumptions are that the people like Korean food, and that they'll pay this kind of price, and that they'll come out in their droves at night. Maybe one of the assumptions is that there are enough people in the suburb who like Korean food for me to open this kind of restaurant. So if you're clever about it, you then start laying down on a piece of paper, what are all the assumptions that you're basing this investment on, or this gamble, that are not yet proven fact. So say, for example, you go and read a statistic, and the statistic says that for every 100 people in a suburb, one of them will come to a Korean restaurant every night. And therefore you say, cool, if I want to have so many people on an average month coming through my restaurant, I need to make sure that there are at least 300,000 people in the suburb. That's an assumption. So you can test those assumptions. Is the population in the area correct? If the population in the area is correct, then you say, right, well, according to the assumption, 1 in 100 people will come to my restaurant every night. So how do I test that assumption without building a restaurant? And there are ways to test those assumptions by building what's called a minimum viable product. So if you really have mom cooking in the kitchen and you can cook a Korean menu, take it to a shopping center, see how many people walk past your stall or your stand before they stop and see what you're selling, and test your assumptions before you go and spend millions of rand building the restaurant. So you want to glean what I'm saying from the example. There are many assumptions that we make when we build a business, but we don't realize until we get there that we actually made the assumption, because suddenly things aren't panning out the way we thought they would.
Yeah, and I usually find, Adam, that people, when people do minimum viable product or market testing, they say they're going to ask their family, their friends, and those are all the wrong people to ask, because they just want you to make you feel good, and they're just going to give you exactly what you want to hear. They're exactly the wrong people to ask. So if you want to know if something's going to work, you can ask the people that don't like you.
Yeah, ask the people
that don't care about your feelings, because everybody else is just, it's meaningless.
Yeah, and that's the hard truth. In business, people are fairly fickle and very ruthless. They'll spend their money with you today, and if they don't like one thing about your product or your service, they'll be somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned also a few tools. I don't want to go through them in details, but I mean, people can just go and Google Pestle and Porter's 5 Forces and Opportunity Selection, or just buy your book. And everything is nicely in there, giving them ideas and tips on how to actually do some research on the market. But actually, you've got to spend a bit of time on this part, because if you get this part wrong, you're not going to have a business in the end. But Adam, the one thing that being an accountant myself, I'm acutely aware of, and I love those financial concepts that you brought in. Cash flow, break-even, return on investment, bank accounts, and drawings. Where do you find, in your experience, which one do people need to focus on the most? Which one is the most neglected, that if entrepreneurs focused on it, they would actually have a more successful business, or even a successful business?
Jacques, I think you're probably the most critical one is the cash flow. People understand an income statement, but not understand the concept of a cash flow or the importance of cash flow in business.
But Adam, cash flow is the money in my bank. What are you talking about? I mean, don't you get that a lot?
Sure you do. So a lot of people go through this thing of putting together a sample income statement. And they say, right, well, we're going to spend this much on rent, and we're going to spend this much on salaries, or I'm not going to take a salary myself. I'm just going to run the business and basically work for the business for nothing. And they'll present to you what looks like a very nice, positive balance sheet or income statement for the business, because they want it to look good. And they say, we're going to sell this much product, and we're going to buy this much product, and we're going to start off with 1,000 Rand in the bank, and we'll sell 10 products for 1,000 Rand, so we'll make 10,000 Rand, and we'll spend 5,000 Rand, on costs. So at the end of the month, we're going to end up with 5,000 Rand in the bank. Yeah. But in actual fact, it doesn't work out that way. You go and buy your product, and your supplier says, we don't sell them in tens, we sell them in hundreds. So you think you're going to sell 10 products a month, but you've got to buy 100 in order to sell the first 10. So instead of spending your 500 Rand or your 5,000 Rand on product, you've got to spend 50. Mm-hmm. Because things don't always pan out the way they do once you sell them in ones and twos, units of ones and twos. And then you're going to sell, and you're going to go and do a deal, and somebody's going to say, cool, I want the product I want you to deliver today, but I'm only going to pay you in 10 days' time. So there's this thing called cash flow that's really more important than the income statement, because if the time comes at the end of the month for you to pay salaries and pay rent and buy your stocks, and you don't have the money in the bank, well, all that wonderful planning you did on your income statement is worthless. Mm. When I went to a lecture by Clive Butko, who runs Kalon Ventures, and he said that of all the businesses that failed in his experience, one of the things that most of the businesses that failed had in common was they didn't have a cash flow, and they weren't running their business according to careful cash flow planning. So it's vital and critical that business owners learn how to build a cash flow and develop this practice of running a cash flow every day.
Mm. Yeah, I get my clients to do at least a 3-month cash flow forecast, especially if they're in tight positions. Because that's if a business grows, it eats up cash flow. Point. It's as simple as that. And if you don't get that equation, if you don't manage that, even though you might make profits, but if you don't manage that cash flow appropriately, you'd find yourself in a very peculiar situation very quickly.
Yeah. And in the book, I'll give you some practical models about how to build that cash flow, because it's not just a matter of saying sales this month, expenses this month, money at the end of the month. It's literally a matter of taking every single day of the month, day by day, and working out roughly as close as you can to an estimate how much money you're likely to get in the bank on this day, how much money you need to spend on that day, and what your opening and closing balance is going to be daily.
Yeah. Adam, so before we turn on to part 2 of your book, which is the managing the business part, I just want to touch on one other element in the startup phase, which I know is extremely important, and that is the raising of capital. Now, the one thing that I did find very interesting is your reference to families and friends, where you said, don't go there. Now, is that because you've had personal bad experience there, or just give us a bit of insights into your journey on raising capital?
So my journey on raising capital, Jacques, is really interesting. The reason I say don't go to friends and family is not from personal experience, but it's from other people that I know. And I don't think there's been a happy story of somebody lending family and friends and it turning out well. You want to separate business and family as far as possible. And the one thing that's going to cause a problem is money. So you don't put family in business, and then you don't put family's money in your business. Otherwise, you're just asking for trouble. Everybody assumes it's going to go well. And once you've raised money and you've got somebody else's money in your business, there's a different relationship between the two of you. No matter what they say at the beginning when they give you money or lend you money, and they say, yeah, it's all fine, you can pay it back whenever, at some point that becomes a contentious issue, unless you happen to be one of the lucky ones and you're able to do extremely well and make your investors very happy.
Absolutely.
Personally, I've never raised venture capital. I've always built my business on capital that I've kind of bootstrapped or generated throughout the business. So my own journey in raising finance has always been through creating cash flow in the business, using that cash flow to leverage lending, and then using that sort of gearing to create cash to build the business further. I know when I did my MBA, I did a research project, and one of the questions I asked I think I interviewed about 200 businesses, was how much, where did you get your money from? And I think the figure there was only 4% of the businesses that I interviewed got venture capital funding. It's not that easy to raise venture capital money. Everybody thinks they're going to put together a wonderful business plan and go and raise finance. It doesn't always happen. Generally, people funded their own business through personal borrowings, through credit cards, through wherever they could find cash, and it wasn't from venture capital in most of the cases.
And I guess Adam, there's also a case for raising money through running a minimum viable product, and then building it from there, because people are, one, you can actually make a bit of money from a minimum viable product, and two, once you've got a minimum viable product, I think it's much easier to lend money. Or for people to invest in your business once you've actually shown that there is some sort of a cash flow coming through.
Yeah, and also, Jacques, there's this massive gap between what you think people understand when you show them a picture of nothing and what they actually understand. So you say, I'm going to build this thing, and they've got this impression in their mind about what it is you're going to build, and it's nothing like what ends up, what you end up producing. Yeah. So, I used to do so many exercises in the classroom with that, where I'd say, right, we're going to do an exercise in misunderstanding, and I would say to the class, draw a ship. I think I actually got an example of this in the book. I said, draw a picture of a ship, and everybody says, oh, this is such an easy exercise, and they draw a picture of a ship, and then we go and compare notes afterwards. And I say, right, if your ship has this element, you get a point. If it has that element, you get a point. And then they say, no, but you never said that. You never said that. And it's just such a simple exercise in the gap in understanding on concepts we think are easily communicated. So imagine going to a venture capitalist or somebody who you're supposed to borrow millions of rands for to invest in a concept that's not been built, and you try to explain to them what this ship looks like, where you can't even understand or get a common understanding on a word like a ship. You want to try and communicate something that's never been built or that doesn't exist, and you want somebody to understand what's in your head. So the idea of a minimum viable product definitely helps, because you can show somebody what you're building. And people are more likely to invest money in something that already has some sort of traction, or they can see, rather than something that's a vaporware where, it hasn't been built. How long does it take to get built? What does it look like when it gets built? Will people like it when it is built? And at least if you've done your minimum viable product, you can answer those questions before people then start throwing the questions at you about will it work or won't it. And you can say, look, we built this, we've tested it, and this is the actual response from potential customers.
Yeah. Adam, so we've got a question there from Yula Banda from Facebook, and she's asking, interesting phenomenon RE regarding the minimum viable product. How will this apply to a service business where there isn't a tangible product per se?
But there is, even in a service business, if your service hasn't been fully developed, now I'm not quite sure what service we're talking about, but any product can be tested. So, for example, if you're talking about, I don't know, building a transport business where you're going to take kids from home to school, you don't have to have the whole taxi service and the whole how to register and how to get my kids onto your service in order to prove the product. You can get 10 people who have kids and say, right, we're testing a service. We're going to pick up your kids at 8 o'clock in the morning. We're taking them to school. We're going to charge you for the service because we want to see if it's worth something to you. So our service normally costs you 1,000 Rand a month, but we're going to give it to you at 500 Rand a month for the first 3 months because we want to test it. And you can run your service as a beta test. I think that I don't think there's too many instances where you can't build a minimum viable product. Remember that the purpose of a minimum viable product isn't to create the whole solution.
Yes.
It's to build experiences or practical interactions with what will be either the entire of your service or product or just an element of it in order to test your assumptions. So you might say, if you're building a service and your service is about kids, for example, one of the assumptions you're making is that parents will trust you to take their kids if they don't know you.
Yeah.
Go and test that assumption. People who don't know you and offer to take their kids to and from school and see how that pans out.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing about a minimum viable product is that you're going to spend a certain amount on resources. So you'll have to accumulate resources. Obviously not the full Monty, but there is going to be some expenditure. You're just trying to, and I'm talking about capital expenditure. There's going to be some sort of a capital expenditure just to get the thing off the ground. But what you're trying to do is to eliminate your loss ratio or your loss risk by spending as little as possible. But I get what you're saying. I mean, that's, even if you have a service, you've got to run that as a minimum to a few people to see, is this thing going to pull off? Doesn't matter what you sell, whether it's accounting services, digital services, or just making lunch boxes for school children. There's always something that you just got to go and check. Is there somebody that's going to pay me money, transfer money into my account, or swipe a card? Adam, I want to continue this conversation, but I want to continue this conversation with the second part of your book. So now we've got the business up and running. We've mobilized the resources. The funding is there. Now we've got to manage your business. But isn't this the easy part, Adam? Like, why do you write a section about the easy part?
At the risk of being, crass, the answer is hell no. This is where the problems start.
Yeah. So share with us. I mean, well, let's just go through some of your notes. And I think the first thing that really caught my eye, and I've seen it so many times, and I think this is the bane of every entrepreneur, is the shiny things. Everything is an opportunity. Everything, and the problem is it's almost the nature of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are by nature optimistic, which means that everything they can do, and everybody talks about this concept of a one-stop shop. So I'm going to do a one-stop shop, be everything to everyone, and but that has there's a different side to the coin of that, and that's not focus. So share with us your insight into this discipline that you're talking about, that is focus.
So, Jacques, just to put this in perspective, and I mentioned this in the foreword in the book. When I started this learning journey of mine that resulted in a successful business, I had a business that could only be described as chaos. there weren't enough hours in a day for me to do the work that was required to hold this business together. That was a software business that was just fraught with problems, and a software product that didn't work, and customers that were continually complaining. And I was literally working 26 hours a day. If there were 26 hours a day, I would have used more. And the business wasn't making money. And the problem with the business wasn't so much the product, but the way the business was being managed. Because the very same business 5 or 6 years later, after I had applied all this learning to this business, I had more than 10 times the number of customers, and I was working, less than 10% of the amount of time. And the only difference between the two was that I started applying proper management principles to this business, and I improved the whole management process. So much so that there was so much time in my day left over to build a business, and that's probably why the business is the way it is now, why it's growing. Where the management was so tight and the systems and processes were so well organized that the business was a well-oiled machine that enabled me to grow it and grow it. Now, if you take the entrepreneur's journey, most entrepreneurs will create this idea and then probably will fall hand over fist trying to make it work. And it's in that process, that gap between, starting off a business and coming up with a great idea and putting it into production and having a successful business, that we're talking about this gap now, that we're talking about this definite imperative to improve the management side of your business. And I'll talk about it a lot in my business, because it did make such a profound difference to me as a person, to my business, and to the potential for this business to succeed.
Yeah, I mean that is every entrepreneur's biggest issue. Is to get this thing right. In the book, you also refer to one of Stephen R. Covey's principles of time management, which is urgent versus important. How do you distinguish between those two? How have you applied it in your businesses to go, okay, shit, man, this is urgent, I've got to do it now, or this is important, I've got to do that now? Because that urgent usually sounds like a customer. And as we all know, we do stuff for the customer because the customer pays the bills and the bills pay the salaries.
Yeah. So Jacques, imagine you're going on a journey in your car, and when you're driving, you can map out the distance between petrol stations and your petrol tank. So when you're driving from Joburg to Durban, you've got a car that's got a capacity of doing, let's say, 500 kilometers. You've got a journey of 600 kilometers. At some point, you need to fill up.
Yeah.
So when you leave Joburg, heading for Durban, putting petrol in the car is kind of important, but you can put it off till later because it's not essential that you do it now.
Yeah.
However, by the time you've done 450 kilometers and that red light is flashing because you forgot to put petrol in, now it becomes urgent. If you don't now, something's going to break.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And now you compound that. When you left Joburg, you didn't need to stop for the bathroom.
Yeah.
And at some point, that need becomes urgent. Like, you got to stop now. So what's important and what's urgent always fluctuates.
Yeah.
If you just write down everything that you have to do, and just put a rating next to it, you have a column that says urgent and another column that says important, and you tick both of those or one of those. If it's important, it's kind of important, like doing the maintenance on your car so it doesn't break later, or filling up the car in time so it doesn't become a problem later. Those are the important things where you need to do them, but there's time to schedule them properly.
Yeah.
The urgent things are that customer phones as a problem now. You can't avoid those. So we're not saying that just because anything's urgent that it's wrong, because urgent and important will always fluctuate over time. But the sign of most entrepreneurs is that they run on chaos. So you talk to entrepreneurs that, I'm driven by adrenaline. No, you're driven by disorganization. And you can change that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found is that if you do things that are important well in advance, you do them so much better.
Yeah.
If you do things that are important too late and you do them while they're urgent, you don't do them as well.
Yeah.
So you'll plug a gap quickly and you'll stick a band-aid on a bleeding wound because it's urgent.
Yeah.
But if you have time, you would do it properly so that you never ended up with a bleeding wound in your business in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so important that you get rid of the chaos first. I mean, if your life is chaos now, you've got to go through this exercise and unfortunately do all the urgent things quickly so that you can carve time for yourself.
Yeah.
But while you're doing those urgent things, you've got to look inside your business and ask yourself the question, what caused that issue to become urgent in the first place?
Yeah.
And fix it.
Yeah.
So while you've got a list of 100 things that you have to do, you don't dispatch everything as quickly as you can just to get it off your list.
Yeah.
You pick those ones that are important recurring problems, and while you're getting them off your list, you figure out what caused them in the first place. You figure out how to fix it, and you spend that extra hour fixing the cause so you don't have that same problem tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you find that your list becomes less and less and less, and your urgency becomes less and less. You can spend more.
It's actually about solving it. And Adam, I mean, I must say, I find in my line of work that if a client doesn't write down planning actually doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he who doesn't write down his to-do list or his priorities on a daily basis is he who does not plan.
Yeah.
And then the distinction between urgent and important becomes very vague, because the clarity of thought of writing stuff down is a tremendous big part of the planning process. And planning inevitably doesn't work out 100%, but you've got to get damn close to like 80% that your planning works out. And I've read a very interesting book lately called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And in that, the guy, his name is Ben, he talks about the fact that executives, or senior people in a business, they need to be able to plan well. It's a key skill. That if you want to run a business and you can't plan, you won't grow your business. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Key business leaders can plan well, and if you're not doing that, just don't expect your business to grow. It's period. It's like a law. It's like the law of gravity.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a little mantra that I say to people who don't plan, and it's that if you don't value your time and plan your time, somebody else will plan your time for you, because they'll figure out what time you have available, and they'll more than happily use it for you.
Yeah.
So if you understand what your timing is like and what your priorities are like, you tend to focus on those and get those done. If you don't, you're going to go through the day anyway. It's just that you're not going to be productive, and you're not going to get closer to that vision or ideal that you're trying to reach.
Absolutely. Adam, we've got a question there from Garth. Garth, thank you very much for your excellent question. He says that I find that in business, balancing workload, which very much relates to what we're talking about, can be quite a tricky game, especially in the startup process. How did you manage your workload when you started your businesses? And have you got any tips, Adam?
Yeah, so the answer
is a whole box.
The answer when I started the businesses is I didn't do those things very well at all. And I ended up in chaos.
That's how you wrote the book, Adam. God, buy the book. The answers are in there.
People say to me, where do you find the time, to write a book? And their answer is, you don't find the time, you make the time.
Yeah, that's excellent.
It doesn't just happen. So it's pretty much what I was talking about just now, Jacques. If you're working too hard, then you need to take a step back, and you need to look at that urgent important matrix, and you need to ask the question: what am I working on, and what should I be working on?
Yeah.
And how am I doing what I'm doing? Is it the most efficient way?
Yeah.
And you start answering that question first, so that while you're doing the things that you need to do, to launch your business, you are not consuming all of your time and all of your energy doing the work in front of you just because it's there. You carve out some time for yourself to look at business growth and the strategic position of where you want your business to be. And even if you've got 20 minutes to do that part of your work today, you do 20 minutes on that part of your work and you plan that strategic growth. And tomorrow you look at the way you're doing the work that you're doing. So if it's taking you 8 hours a day and you don't have time for anything else, you look at your processes and you try and make that 8 hours, 7 hours and 50 minutes, and 7 hours and 40 minutes the next day, and 7 hours and 30 minutes, so that you carve out some time for yourself to be more effective.
Yeah.
And the more you get rid of those things that are consuming time unnecessarily, or those processes that you've already engaged in, that are taking up too much of your time, you then start working on a business that becomes more efficient at building what it's supposed to be building.
Yeah. And talking about processes, Adam, let's just briefly touch on the next subject, because we don't have a lot of time left, but I really want to just highlight for our listeners one or two major things here. And you also refer in your book a bit to Michael E. Gerber from the E-Myth, because I know he's also very strong on this whole process thing, because you need operations to deliver. So it's one thing to do the invoice, to have the idea, to have the capital, but if you can't deliver it, your business is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. You'll have a first month, a second month, but by the third, fourth month, you'll be catched out as a fraud and you'll have no business. So hence, consistency, predictability, and reliability. And the reason that is important is because you want your customer, as Adam has outlined in his book, you want them to have a consistent experience. Because, Adam, when a customer has a consistent experience, the customer trusts you. Because they know that every time I go to your restaurant, I'm going to get a consistent experience. Or every time I make use of your accounting services, or every time I buy a cake from you, I'm going to get a consistent experience. And only a way you can deliver something consistently and predictably and reliably is to have bulletproof systems. And then I've got in red there, Adam, I want you to elaborate on this, because this for me was the key nugget in your book, about tracing the customer's journey. And you actually speak about not designing a business according to an organogram, because the customer doesn't give two hoots about your organogram. The organogram is for, I don't know, some clever MBA guy that was doing a thesis on it, or something. I don't know, Adam. I don't know where organogram comes from, but tracing the customer's journey. Just spend a few minutes for us on that, because I think it's an extremely important point in managing and growing your business.
Jacques, I think let me start with the example that kind of gave me the impetus to focus on this in my business and in the book. I think we've all had an experience with a cellular company or telecom or a bank where you've gone in to solve a problem. And they will take you in at, for example, the information counter, or you'll end up phoning a call center and you'll get through to a person and you'll tell them all about your problem, and they'll say, oh no, we can't fix that for you here, you must go there. And they'll kind of make you navigate your way throughout this whole organization. And I remember having that problem given back to me by one of the banks. And they said, oh no, you can't solve it here, you must go to this department. And I said, well, can you give me the book? I said, and they said, what book? I said, the book where all of this is detailed, where it says if I got this kind of problem, I need to go there. Because when I encountered your organization, it said, here's a number. If you've got a problem, phone this number. So I'm phoning the number. But now you're telling me that's not going to solve my problem. So where's it written down how I can solve my problem? And they said, no, it's not written down. I said, great, because if it's not written down, you can solve the problem for me, because clearly you understand how your organization works a whole lot better than I do. Now, what organizations do is they organize functionally, so they put all the finance people in one department and all the compliance people in one department and all the production people in another department. But as a customer, that's not how we experience the organization. You'll walk into a branch of a bank, for example, you want to open a bank account. And for us as a customer, that's the journey. I'm going to go here, I'm going to fill in these forms, I'm going to walk out with something. But we don't understand what goes on in the background. For us as business owners, you've got to design that whole organization and all of your processes around the journey you want your customer to take. Now, in most instances, we design, for example, the sales process because that's the key. That's going to make us all the money. So that sales process is slick. A customer fills in their details online, they get their product the next day, wonderful. And the main journey we want our customers to go on is usually very well defined and nice and easy. But when there's a problem, that's when everything falls apart.
Yes.
And you have to go back and say, right, so we've sold to our customer, now what? What's the next thing they're going to need? Where's the next point of pain going to come? Or how can we make their lives easier? And so you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, trying to solve a problem with your organization. And the best thing, the one thing I love is to tell people to become a customer of their own organizations and take away access to, if you're the CEO, take away access to everybody in your organization on the WhatsApp, because if you have a problem, you can WhatsApp your developers and say, fix this, or you can WhatsApp your accounts people and say, just do this for me. If you're a customer and you don't have access to all of that, where do you go?
Mm.
We have to understand that customer journey from the time they first interact with our organization till the time they are, in our customer database and they've used our product for 3 years and they've come back to us with issues and problems. We have to understand every one of those interactions and build those processes so that if something happens, there's an automated way we deal with it. There's a process that people follow to fix customer problems so that your customer isn't left hanging or made worse, made to go and solve their own problems using what bits and pieces of your organization you let them find for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but you've almost got to stress your own thing, not just necessarily wait for the customer. You've sometimes got to take your own journey. You've got to go and eat in your own restaurant. You've got to, you've got to go and buy your own cake. To know what it is that the customer is experiencing, so that you become intricately involved in solving that or making sure that experience is consistent and is something that you want other people to pay you pay you for.
If you design your ultimate customer experience, you then go and mystery shop your own product. So we did some work with some casinos, for example, where the whole product was all about the casino and what you do and experience when you're there. But the customer journey didn't start there. The customer journey started on the highway when you approach the casino and when you get out your car and walk down the parking lot and go past the security guard to get in. So by the time you arrive at the casino, you want to turn around and run away because you already had a bad experience. And managers and people who run businesses don't really look at the entire customer journey.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Adam, before we leave, I just wanted to ask you one or two more questions. It's been absolutely fantastic having you here on the Business Book Club. But what do you believe is true about business, even though you can't prove it?
Wow. I think it's a lovely curveball question. I think the answer I give you there, Jacques, is that your dreams are possible, but they take work.
Mm.
The ability of most people with vision is limited only by the size of your vision. And the one thing that you can achieve in your business is everything that you decide it can be.
Mm.
The worst thing you can do on your business is give up. I'm going to balance that by saying the other worst thing you can do is push a bad idea. But if you have a dream and you have a vision and your vision is strong enough, I believe that you will get there. It's just, maybe this business idea wasn't the right thing. So you try something, it doesn't work, but it doesn't mean you abandon the whole thing. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure, and it doesn't mean the business isn't going to work. It does mean that if your vision is strong enough, you're going to go back to your vision where you are now, and you're going to say, right, is this the right way to go to get there? And if it's not, how do we get around this obstacle so we can continue climbing that mountain?
Cool. I love that. And then as parting, Adam, any ask or request from our audience or any last parting words that you would like to share with the people that have joined us here tonight?
So for the folks joining us, I wrote this book because I discovered so many things that if I'd only known them years before, I wouldn't have made the mistakes that I made, or I could have done so much better. And so I think that the lessons and the concepts that I've outlined in the book, and I've tried to make them as simple as possible, and I've tried to put them in terms of stories and case studies with nice bright colored examples, so that the book is actually a nice read as well. That if you're applying these lessons to your business, they should make some form of a difference. You should be able to see some results. I've also organized the book in such a way that you don't have to read the book cover to cover. You approach the book, right, I've got a problem with this, and it's like an encyclopedia where you can go and find answers to questions that you're asking at the time. It's not one of those books that you have to read cover to cover in order to get the lessons. You can start kind of going through it and take learnings away in bite-sized chunks. But I would also then encourage you to join, the discussions and get onto our Facebook page, the SME Expert Facebook page, and become part of that business community that's asking questions and exchanging information about, how these lessons are making a difference in the business owners' lives.
Awesome. And Adam, after tonight, we'll send out an email, obviously with a link to the podcast for everybody that's on our database. If you're not on our database, please send me an email directly to Jacques at thebusinessbookclub.co.za. We'll send out this podcast or a copy of this webinar, plus a link where you can buy Adam's book. Adam, where else can people get a hold of your book?
You can only get hold of our book through our website. You can order online, and that website is Imagine8. That's IMAGIN and the number 8.co.za. Have a look under SME resources and place your order there.
All right, excellent. But we'll also, all of that information will be available on the link. Once again, if you're not on our database, you're not getting emails from us, please send your email address or send me an email to Jacques at thebusinessbookclub.org, and I'll make sure that you get the link. Adam, I want to thank you so much for being with us on the Business Book Club tonight. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for writing a brilliant book, for contributing to entrepreneurship in our country that desperately needs it. Thank you for everyone that has attended, that is being part of this. Thank you for your questions and your participation. And I'm going to hand over back to Bronwyn just to wrap up the evening for us. And Bronwyn, over to you.
Hi, can you hear me, Jacques?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Adam. That was really amazing. I just wanted to give everybody a bit more information for what happens after this event. So you can also visit our website, www.thebusinessbookclub.org. You can also sign up for our newsletters there to keep in, for us to keep in contact with you for anything that's happening in the future. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And then Adam has also said that he would like you to engage with him after this event as well. And you can do that on his Facebook group called SM Expert. So you can find him there, SM Expert. I will also email all this information after this event as well within the next 2 days. So I'll give you all of these links as well. And then also you can email Adam at Imagine8, IMAGIN, and the number 8.co.za. So again, I'll send that all out. So obviously, because this isn't a live event and we are not able to collect books, if you would like to donate cash so that we can purchase books and distribute them, I will also be sending a link out on that email in the next 2 days, if you would like to. No obligation, but it is completely up to you, and you can donate as much as you would like to. And that is about it for this evening. Thank you all for joining us. We will keep in touch on email for anything happening in the future, and we hope you have an amazing evening. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Bronwyn. Thanks, Adam. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.